Imagine this. It's just before dawn on a foggy August morning in 1888, and a carman making his way to work along a narrow Whitechapel alley notices something lying in a gateway. At first he thinks it's a discarded tarpaulin. Then he sees the blood pooling beneath it, still warm, and the woman's throat opens so wide the spine gleams in the half-light. In that single moment, the most infamous murder mystery in history begins. A killer who will terrorize London, humiliate its police, and vanish forever, leaving only a nickname that still chills us today: Jack the Ripper. In the autumn of 1888, the East End of London was a place the rest of the city preferred to pretend didn't exist. Almost 1 million people, many of them recent immigrants fleeing pogroms or famine, were crammed into 1 square mile of Whitechapel and Spitalfields. Families of 8 or 10 slept in single rooms that stank of damp and human waste. Open sewers ran down the middle of streets. Cholera and tuberculosis killed more reliably than any knife. Work, when you could get it, was brutal and seasonal. When the work dried up, gin was cheap and prostitution cheaper still. Police estimates put the number of full or part-time sex workers in Whitechapel at around 1,200. These women, often in their 30s or 40s, worn down by alcohol and hardship, were the invisible underclass of Victorian Britain. And in the space of 10 terrifying weeks, 5 of them would become the most famous murder victims the world has ever known. The canonical 5, the murders almost universally accepted as the work of the same hand, began on Friday, the 31st of August, 1888. Marianne Polly Nichols, 43, separated from her husband and battling alcoholism, had been turned away from her lodging house because she couldn't scrape together 4pence for a bed. Around 3:40 a.m., her body was found in Buck's Row. Her throat had been cut twice, so deeply that the head was nearly severed. Her abdomen was slashed open in long, jagged wounds, the intestines protruding. The killer had been interrupted, or had simply chosen not to linger. The mutilations, though shocking, were relatively restrained compared to what was coming. 8 days later, on Saturday the 8th of September, Annie Chapman, 47, was discovered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street just after 6 a.m. This time, the escalation was unmistakable. Annie's throat was severed down to the spine. Her abdomen had been opened completely, and the intestines lifted out and placed over her shoulder. A deliberate, almost theatrical arrangement. Her uterus had been expertly removed and taken away. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, the police surgeon, noted that the killer displayed at least some anatomical knowledge. The womb was gone, the first unmistakable sign that this was not mere murder, but ritualistic violation. The deliberate arrangement of the organs and the expert removal of the uterus sent a profound chill through Whitechapel. This was not random violence. This was a purposeful act, and the killer had shown he could operate without rush. The terror reached its peak on the night of 29th to 30th September, the infamous double event. Elizabeth Stride, 44, was found shortly after 1 a.m. in Dutfield's yard off Berner Street. Her throat had been cut, but there was almost no other mutilation, and blood still flowed from the wound. Most experts believe the killer was disturbed, probably by the arrival of Louis Diemschutz and his pony cart, and fled before he could finish his work. Less than an hour later, barely 3/4 of a mile away, Catherine Eddowes, 46, was discovered in the corner of Mitre Square. Here the Ripper had time. Eddowes's face was mutilated almost beyond recognition. Nose sliced off, cheeks slashed, eyelids nicked. Her intestines had been lifted out and draped over her right shoulder. Her left kidney and most of her uterus were missing. A piece of her blood-soaked apron was later found in a doorway on Goulston Street beneath a chalked message. "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Fearing riots, Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren ordered it washed away before it could be properly photographed. One of the most controversial decisions of the entire investigation. Finally, on the morning of 9th November, the horror reached its grotesque climax. Mary Jane Kelly, just 25 and considered by some the prettiest of the victims, was killed indoors in her tiny room at 13 Miller's Court, Dorset Street. Because the Ripper was undisturbed for perhaps 2 hours, the mutilation was apocalyptic. Her face was hacked to the bone, breasts severed and placed on the bedside table, heart removed entirely and taken away. One examining doctor wrote that the whole surface of the abdomen and thighs was removed. The visceral organs were found arranged around the body in a manner that suggested deliberate design. The police response was massive, but hampered by the limitations of 1888. No fingerprints, no DNA, no CCTV. House-to-house searches were carried out on an unprecedented scale. Over 2,000 lodgers were questioned. Vigilance committees patrolled the streets. Hundreds of letters poured in claiming to be from the killer, almost all obvious hoaxes. 2 stand out: the Dear Boss letter that first gave the murderer his immortal nickname, and the From Hell letter sent to George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. This letter was accompanied by half a preserved human kidney, allegedly preserved in wine or spirits, delivered in a small box. Most experts today believe Dear Boss was a journalistic fake, but the crude and misspelled From Hell correspondence remains the one piece many ripperologists refuse to dismiss entirely. Suspects came and went in dizzying numbers. Early police favorites included various butchers and slaughtermen, but attention soon turned to men with some medical or anatomical knowledge. The list has grown absurdly long, but a handful keep resurfacing. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish hairdresser who was committed to an asylum in 1891. Senior officers at the time named a Kosminski as their prime suspect. Recent studies through 2025 have claimed that mitochondrial DNA from a shawl found beside Catherine Eddowes matches living relatives of Kosminski. The evidence remains fiercely contested. Contamination over 130 years is almost inevitable, and mitochondrial DNA is far from conclusive. Thus, even the closest thing we have to a forensic link still leaves room for doubt, ensuring the mystery lives on. Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolmaster who drowned himself in the Thames shortly after the Kelly murder. Francis Tumblety, a flamboyant American quack doctor and virulent misogynist who fled to the United States immediately after Kelly's murder. George Chapman, real name Severin Klosowski, a Polish poisoner hanged in 1903. The murders stopped as abruptly as they began. No canonical victim after Mary Jane Kelly. Theories abound. The killer died, was imprisoned for another crime, or simply chose to stop. Whatever the reason, Whitechapel slowly exhaled, though the fear never truly left. Today, the Ripper sites are gone, yet thousands still walk the streets every year
trying to feel the chill of 1888. The case endures not because we love a mystery, but because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. About poverty that made women invisible until they were dead. About policing that was powerless against a lone predator. About a society that preferred lurid headlines to real reform. More than 135 years later, we are no longer hunting Jack the Ripper. We are remembering Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. 5 ordinary women trying to survive an unforgiving city whose brutal deaths exposed the rot at the heart of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. The Ripper may have escaped justice, but his victims deserve to be remembered by name, not just as footnotes to a monster. If you want to walk those streets yourself and stand where history's most elusive killer once stood, many tour guides offer proper guided tours, preferably at night, when the fog rolls in and the East End feels just a little closer to 1888. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the past isn't nearly as dead as we like to think.